Hi, Virgo. This is Lee at Fresh Astrology. How are you? We're going to look at your November 2019. And before we get started, I just want to let you know my website has changed. I'm no longer at freshastrology.com. I'm now at leesears.com. And I'll put, after I finish this, I'll put the website below. And there you can find my new membership lounge. This is where I'll be doing my more in-depth readings from now on. And readings will go up there first. I'll also do weekly readings and forecasts. Members can learn a little bit about astrology. I'll have some basic astrology lessons. And also each month, a member will be chosen for a free reading. So go join the membership lounge at leesears.com, and I look forward to seeing you there. So this month, November, what's in store for Virgo? So let me go over here and look at your chart. Well, first of all, on November 5th, we have Mars square Pluto. And in your chart, what this means, hang on, I'm just going to neaten this up a little bit. This is live, by the way, so if I start talking to people, it's because they're watching live and asking questions. And when it's live, I can't edit out the boring stuff or the moments where I pause. So if it seems different, like I'm talking to people and suddenly saying hello to somebody, it's because it's live. And if you're not watching it live, you're watching it later and just need to know that it was live at some point where I could actually interact with people. So Mars square Pluto, this is happening in a zone that has to do with your value system and your ability to create or manifest. It also, on a more mundane level, has to do with how you earn and spend money and how you create, a garden, a book, a painting, anything you could create, a business. It could have to do with a child or a romance. When Mars is square Pluto, the traditional thinking is that it would be challenging. And that could be true. Sometimes, though, it must be said that a square doesn't feel challenging or hard, but it feels like work, especially with Mars, especially with Pluto and Saturn nearby to Pluto in Capricorn. It can feel with Mars and Libra, and Mars and Libra is Mars is not in its happy place, and Libra is not as comfortable with Mars here. So Mars and Libra square Pluto, which is nearly conjunct with Saturn and Capricorn, might feel challenging. It might feel like your kids are work. It might feel like work, your fun work feels more like work. It may feel like romance is a lot of hard work, but it could also just feel like something worthwhile, something you really want that matters to you, that is ultimately fun and may ultimately bring money in, but it's kind of speculative. It may just feel like you have to put a lot of effort in. You have to roll up your sleeves and do some work. And it may not be as easy as it always usually is. Because sometimes, when we're in our groove with something that's fun for us, like a hobby or just something we love to do, when we're in our groove, time can pass and we could be working like from all outward appearances. It may look like we're working really hard and really focused and dedicated, but internally it can feel like time is flying by. We don't even realize that hours have gone by because we're in our flow, we're in our groove. However, at this time around November 5th, and again, it's fleeting, Mars moves quickly, but it'll probably last a few days before the 5th, a few days after the 5th. It may feel like, woo, this takes work. This fun thing is work, or this romance thing is work, or this child thing is work, or this fun project is feeling like work right now. It may feel like it takes a lot of effort. And this is to ultimately, for most of you, to bring in money. For some of you, there's a romance that maybe has marriage potential or long-term potential, but it may be feeling kind of hard around the beginning of November. And it's up to you, what you decide to do around that. I wouldn't, if anything's worth keeping, it's worth working for. But how do you determine if it's worth keeping? Well, it has to suit all the people involved. Like if it's a romance, like with kids, you don't have much choice. They're there and you just have to put up with sometimes the work you put in. Maybe you're trying to help them afford college, so you're putting in extra hours, or maybe you just have to put in a lot of effort, or maybe you have to spend a lot for a child. And, your kids are worth it ultimately, but sometimes it can feel like, I'm having to work extra hours or 2 jobs to do something for a child. And it just can sometimes feel like work. And romance too, it can sometimes feel more like work than romance. But if it's worth keeping, sometimes it feels like that. We can't always be on cloud 9 with any romance, no matter how good it is. It requires work and compromise on both sides. So how do you decide if it's worth keeping? Like with kids, we have no choice. But with a romance, what makes it worth it? Well, it's got to work for both people. And both people, it can't just be one person doing all the compromise. There's no real compromise if only one person is compromising. That's called sacrifice. That's not compromise. Compromise is when 2 sides go and they kind of meet in the middle. Sacrifice is when one person's like, thinking they're compromising, but really they're doing all the work to come toward what this person wants, or this, maybe it's a company, or maybe it's some other entity. But compromise is when both sides go like this and they meet in the middle somewhere. Maybe it's not totally in the middle, exactly in the middle mathematically, but it's more like this. Compromise is not or it's not just one-sided. That's not really a compromise. So how do you know if it's worth keeping? If both parties, both people are loving and respectful, if both parties are healthy and getting all the help they need for any addictions or mental health issues, but they're getting helped on it and being responsible about the stuff, the baggage that they carry. A healthy relationship, if it's worth it, it looks like both parties compromise all the time, where they understand, both people understand that both people need to yield, and it isn't incumbent on one person to always do the yielding. That's how you decide. So if you could be in this situation, let's say it's romance. Let's just say it's romance. You have to decide who you are in this and be honest. Are you the person who always gets their way? Because sometimes that happens, and just be honest. Like if you step back from it, is the other person always yielding to you and doing what you want? When's the last time you did what they wanted to do? And how often? Was that the exception, or the rule? If you can only think of one time in the last 5 months or last month that you yielded, like, on one occasion you went to dinner where they wanted to go to dinner, that's not really compromise. Just saying. So be honest with yourself. Even if you get your way all the time, this isn't a great relationship for you, because ultimately that other person who is compromising and just so nice that they do everything for you, eventually that's going to, either you're going to just feel like they're a doormat and you won't have respect for them, or they'll get fed up. So you really want a match of equals, equal partners who yield equally and who are, equally strong. That's the best match for you. So, in this time when relationships might feel like work, how balanced is it? Because we've got Mars in Libra. And Mars is going to get really angry if things aren't equal. And we don't know who's playing Mars in this storyline. You'll know more. You'll find out. But, oh, hi, Judith. How are you? Wait, Judith has a question. Judith asks, how can all Virgos have the same reading? Doesn't it depend on the rising sign and what houses the planets fall? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Judith, to answer your question, it's best to focus on reading or listening to or watching your sun sign and your rising sign. Sometimes the moon sign is applicable too. And I know that's a pain, because then you have to like watch two different things and try to figure out how they fit. And even if you watch like your rising, your sun, and your moon sign, that's a lot of dedicated time. And then you have to kind of make sense of it all. There are different phases of life where sometimes the sun sign doesn't really seem like it's applicable. Even the rising sign sometimes can feel off. Sometimes we're really vibing with our moon. So it's sort of a pain, I know, but you have to kind of, if you really want to see what's working for you or what phase you're in, are you really working from your moon? Are you working from your sun? Are you working from your rising sign? Sometimes if you get really well versed in this and actually kind of feeling internally where you are, if you're really emotional right now, or you're in a time of high emotion, then your moon is what you're really vibing through. If you're in a time of ego, not always, it's very human, but kind of it's like me, what path am I on? Then you're kind of coming from your sun. And then there's just sort of this natural default to your rising sign. But a lot of rising sign times are not accurate. So sometimes we're kind of left with guessing, like, did the nurse write it down exactly when I was born? And because I've asked nurses who help with delivery, and they just laugh their heads off when I say, do you write down the accurate time, like right when the baby comes out? And they're just like, that is not their priority. They're not thinking about astrologers out here who need that, accurate date of delivery. They don't care. They're just trying to make sure the baby's okay, the mom's okay. So they don't, maybe they got the right time, maybe they didn't. But the rising sign does help you understand, if it's accurate, helps you understand the houses. But you can absolutely go from your sun sign. It's bizarre how it works, but it does. Where your sun is, if you count the houses over, no matter where the sun is on your birth chart, your sun may be way over in your 7th house. But if you spin it around and put it in the 1st house and, work from that house system, it does work. It can feel accurate. So I don't know how it works. I don't know why that is, but it is true. So thanks, Judith. Okay. You vibe with your rising sign. Yeah. And a lot of people do. So it's fun to know your rising sign. A lot of people don't. So free to roam, my rising sign always resonates best with me. Yeah. And I find that too. I'm a Virgo sun, Libra rising. Yeah. And totally get that. I find that too most of the time. And then there are the weird times when I don't. There are the weird off times. And then you could check out your moon sign, because the moon often goes kind of unseen. It's our emotional landscape, our internal landscape. But sometimes that's where we're living. Sometimes that's where we're really where we are. Excuse me, my allergies right now in this season are terrible. So my voice is barely here. All right, so let's get back to the chart. So that's Mars square Pluto that we were talking about. And, if it's it might not be romance at all, but I just wanted to give you kind of a feel for what it is. It's the same thing with your creative project, though. If it's about your life's work or your company that you're starting or this hobby that's really important, something that's really important that you're giving birth to or have been giving birth to. When Mars is square Saturn and Pluto here, around November 5th, then it can feel like, again, more effort is applied to this area of life. And the benefit here is that Mars is, as much as it's square these other things, it's also bringing you a lot of energy. This is where your energy is. Your energy really is wanting at this time to go into making money. Because probably you've got some money you're spending as well, or you have an idea of something you want to spend on, or even if you're saving. So your energy level and kind of your patience and impatience is kind of working around money. How much money is coming in? How much money I'm going to have for this thing that I want to pay for? And you may be impatient with if romance is pulling you off that, kind of goal, or if even a hobby or a side business is pulling you off from making money, then you may become impatient with it. Or a child, even, you can become impatient with all their needs. This is really normal. Parents, as much as you love your child, parenting is hard, and especially the money aspect can be really challenging. And sometimes kids just absolutely have no respect for the fact that you work really hard to make money to do the stuff that they want. So it's a thankless sometimes, especially when they're younger, especially when they're teenagers. It's a thankless audience, and you're working really hard, and sometimes all they do is want to get mad at you. So there may be something like this going on. It just depends on how old you are and what your situation is. But it's just a few days. The only good reason to know about this is to know that you want to know your end game. Like, for example, going back to the romance, is this a romance you want to keep? Is it worth saving? If it is, then you work through the rough patch a few days. With your kid, you're stuck with your kids and you're fine with that because we all love our kids and we're fine with being stuck with them. But, you choose your battles. Like, I know from being a parent of 3 kids, you choose your battles. And with your hobby or something you're speculating on, like a new business, it's just realistic to know that even if you've chosen some kind of side gig or business or hobby that you love and you're doing what you love there, that there are going to be days. There are going to be days when you're like, this is really hard. And why did I decide to do this? And just, take a deep breath and the days will pass. It'll pass. So then we have the full moon coming up on November 12th. So let's take a look at that. This is happening right at the base of your chart. And kind of looking here. All right, so the full moon's happening at the base of your chart, but it is in the 3rd house, 9th house axis. So what does that mean? Mercury, which is retrograde at this time, is kind of sort of conjunct your sun. And up where the moon is, the moon's not at this particular time with the full moon exactly conjunct Uranus, but it has been just very recently has gone over Uranus. So when you're looking at this axis, there's certain things that come to mind. So one is there's like this teaching learning thing that could be going on for some of you. Like you're taking a course, you're teaching a course, you could be doing both. There's also travel or surprise travel possibilities when you have Mercury and Uranus working here in houses that have to do with travel. So, I would say mid-November, there may be some kind of surprise travel plan. So you may not actually be traveling here because Mercury's retrograde and Uranus is retrograde. It's a great time to plan to travel. I wouldn't actually book anything if you could avoid it. Sometimes we can't, but to do research around travel and to plan is absolutely okay. I would try to avoid booking until early December, but planning is perfect. If you have to travel, you have to travel. And sometimes even under a Mercury retrograde, it's not necessarily bad, especially if you're going back somewhere, back to redo something. So sometimes it could actually be beneficial. It just depends on your situation. In terms of your mental landscape, there's a lot of rehashing, review, talking over. Your mind is very active, but in kind of a researching, reviewing way. And let me just think about this. Some of this mental activity and even the travel and even the learning curve may actually relate to the child we were talking about earlier, if you have a child. It may relate to the romantic situation we were talking about. A lot of talking, going back and forth, travel plans, changing plans. And with like if it's a business, well, let's say like you're writing a book. Let's use that as one example. You would be maybe rewriting some chapters, going back and doing some research, maybe even traveling, like if your book takes place in a very specific location, or to get the research right, you have to travel to interview people. Maybe you would do something like that. If it's like a side business or a business startup, then it would be like reworking, rethinking, rebranding, rewriting, research, learning something again. Like so often when people start, I help people who are starting their businesses all the time. And both as an astrologer, but mostly in my coaching world, I kind of specialize in people starting businesses. So what this makes me think of is reworking your website, your content copy, your social media strategy, your launch timeline, your publicity and marketing. That could be a part of this. So that is the full moon. Now, when we get to November 24th, we have Venus conjunct Pluto, and I'm sorry, it's Venus conjunct Jupiter. I don't know. I wrote Venus conjunct Pluto, but that's not true at all. I'm going to scratch that out. It's Venus conjunct Jupiter. Such a Plutonic time, Plutonian everywhere. So I wrote Pluto, but it's really November 24th, Venus conjunct Jupiter. So in your chart, this is happening in the area of home, family, and it could be anything. It could be somebody coming to stay with you. It could be money that you find from your home. So if you're selling your home, you're getting money out of your home. If you're buying a home, it's a very lucky purchase. It could be decorating, adding on, But there's something, a lucky occurrence, I guess let's just call it a lucky occurrence around your family and home situation. So, and there's money here, like it could very potentially help your money situation. Or it could just, we have all this travel going on, but it could be people coming to stay with you or you going to stay with somebody. It could be, but if you're staying with somebody, it's like somewhere that used to feel like home, or to see somebody who feels like family. It could be something like that. But it's in your 4th house. This is also a psychological house, so it could be just a very comforting time. You feel better. You did have the square earlier in the month, so it could just be a time where just you feel better. You feel better with maybe people coming to visit, or you going to visit somebody. Somebody in particular is making and helping you feel better. And then we have the new moon, November 26th, and this is happening in Sagittarius. And again, at the very base of your chart. So I wonder if there's some kind of new start around home and family. So it could be, because you've got Jupiter here, it could be some kind of turning point with your living situation or who you live with. It just feels like there are other people involved. Financially, it could be good for you. And there's some kind of new start here. So it just, again, depends. If I were working with you personally, we could easily get to the heart of it. But generally speaking, that's what it is. So I'll check if anybody else has a question. Oh, a new baby. Absolutely a new baby. Tanya asks or says, for Virgo, does 2020 offer major breakthroughs or endings of note in stagnant situations, namely work? Well, Tanya, if I look at definitely, I would say that 2020, what's most remarkable about the year is that things in one area of life in particular that have been slowly developing and sometimes seem to go backwards. And specifically for Virgo, this is your 5th house. You also have a slow feeling in your 7th house with Neptune, where it just feels sometimes like mud or mist and hard to understand your world of partnerships and romance. But the 5th house, Pluto and Saturn, Pluto just moves really slowly. And it's been in your 5th house forever, since 2009. And Saturn's been here for a couple of years. So it feels like there's this slow evolution of change and learning going on in your 5th house. And excuse me, my allergies are just terrible right now. The 5th house for you symbolizes relationship growth, which has been slow. And you can have relationship growth even with not a person there. It means that you yourself are evolving somehow, especially with Saturn here for a little bit. You're learning maybe from the past. You're able to see yourself in situations, and maybe from the past. If you're not currently in a relationship, you can see. I'm trying to explain how even if you're not with a person, the growth could be happening. It's more internal because you're learning from the past, and as you mature, you see things differently. So with work, it depends on how you view your work, Tanya. If work is fun or like your own, if you feel like it's your baby or something you're birthing, then it could apply to work. Generally speaking, for Virgos, the work houses are not highly populated, although Saturn over the next year will go into your 6th house of work. And then it'll feel like you've got this, again, another steep learning curve. It depends on how you view your work. That would be a longer conversation. But let's see, how did you phrase your question? Offer major breakthroughs or endings. I mean, I think the chance for strengthening situations is more apropos with Saturn and Pluto. At the same time, if something's not a strong situation, whatever it is, romance, a company you started, a work situation, if it's really weak and can't go through the growing pains, it will break. Then there could be endings. But if it's just been slowly working at being patient, hanging in there, it can strengthen situations too. It can definitely strengthen you. I think it may be best for everyone to think about what they intend. What do you intend to have happen? What do you want? What is your end game here? I think that's a really important thing to know. But Rachel, it absolutely could be a new baby. What emotional things? Well, it's kind of, I don't know, Patricia, if you were here earlier, but it really has to do with, I mean, I don't know, we were dealing with the moons. There were a couple of dates thrown out. So it's wherever the moon is, the full moon's on the 12th in Taurus. And so that was really around people at a distance, learning, teaching, so school themes, publicity, writing, travel themes. That's where the emotions are high mid-month. The new moon, which is usually not quite as emotional, is on the 26th, and that's more at the base of your chart. Let's see. Oh, so you've got Rachel has a Virgo rising partner. Yeah. And the node will return, yes. No, there's nothing alarming, free to roam. There's nothing alarming about the North Node conjuncting your midheaven. I don't think. It's actually kind of a cool time in life. So again, I would be asking you, if I was working with you, one-on-one, I would be saying, well, what's your goal? What do you want? What do you feel like you need to do, but it's really, really hard for you to do? Because the North Node is pulling you towards something. It's pointing the way. It's really where your spirit and your soul, and kind of why you're here right now, right in this moment. You're here right now to do something. The North Node's pointing the way. So be thinking about it that way. I wouldn't be alarmed at all. I never think astrology is alarming. All right, guys. That's pretty much it. But come join us in the membership lounge over at LeeSears.com. I'd love to see you there, and have a wonderful month. Bye.